It is Friday, April the 30th, 2021. Good morning to you. I'm Pearson Bowen. This is the CBC Morning Report. 15 of the 17 new positive COVID-19 cases recorded on Wednesday have been linked to the psychiatric hospital. The confirmation came from Health Minister Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Bostic last night on the CBC Newsnight as he revealed the circumstances that led to the discovery of the positive cases among 14 patients and 1 staff.
On Tuesday, April 27th, a 42-year-old male who was recently discharged from the psychiatric hospital where he resided over the past 3 months presented to the Winston Scott Polyclinic with respiratory symptoms. On testing, it was revealed that he was COVID positive, and immediate testing commenced on the ward from where he was discharged. This testing involved all clinical staff and the entire patient population. The ward comprises 63 clients and 25 members of staff. Of the 32 persons who were tested last night from the affected ward, 14 clients and 1 staff member have tested positive and are in isolation. The Ministry of Health will manage these 14 clients on site, whereas the staff member will be managed at Harrison Point facility. Further testing of the remaining clients and staff was completed today. The Ministry of Health has determined that based on the level of exposure, all staff on the affected ward will be placed in quarantine for 5 days, after which a repeat test will be required to exit quarantine. This approach, endorsed by public health officials, is similar to what obtained at the geriatric hospital in February of this year. Contact tracing is also being conducted in earnest, and it is similar to what obtained at the geriatric hospital in February. Broad-based precautionary testing is on the way at the psychiatric hospital for all other clients and categories of staff.
Well, the Health Minister has urged Barbadians not to panic at this new development.
We have been this route before. We've dealt with cases of a similar nature at other healthcare facilities and senior citizens' homes and other government institutions, and we have been able to overcome those situations, and we are absolutely certain and confident that we will do so in this case. We are very conscious of the fact that this obviously is a sensitive situation, and we are providing all of the support we can to the management and staff at the psychiatric hospital and to the clients, as well as to the families of those persons who have tested positive. The infection control officer or director of the isolation facilities, Dr. Corey Ford and his team, they were there today making all the arrangements for the isolation facilities, the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and for the Ministry of Health and Wellness in general to provide human resources support and technical support as required by the psychiatric hospital. It is an ongoing situation. We are investigating and doing all of the contact tracing that is necessary so that we can determine exactly what generated this spike, and we are giving the best care that we can to those persons who are affected.
We'll have other COVID updates coming up after this break. Barbados recorded 17 new positive cases of COVID-19 on Wednesday from among the 320 tests conducted by the Best dos Santos Public Health Lab. The new positives comprise 2 females and 15 males. Additionally, there are 9 recoveries, leaving 92 people in isolation. There have been 3,855 confirmed cases of COVID-19 since the first case was diagnosed in March last year. 73,931 people have been vaccinated. The number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Jamaica's penal institutions is causing concern among inmates and relatives. With visitations on hold, fingers are pointing at the wardens.
Social distancing is one critical measure to reduce the spread of COVID-19, but the structure of Jamaica's prisons makes that impossible among inmates. It's why visits from relatives were stopped early last year, but according to the Department of Correctional Services website, there have been cases in prisons. Minister without portfolio in the National Security Ministry, Matthew Samuda, confirmed the numbers.
As we've published, we have 14 active cases. I believe they're at the Horizon correctional facility, well, remand center rather, and I believe 1 staff member, I don't recall where he is. So that's a total of 15 active cases in a population between staff and inmates of over 6,000.
With no visitors coming in, inmates have been accusing wardens of bringing the virus to the prisons. Wardens have reportedly suggested that inmates may have contracted the virus when attending court. But Mr. Samuda says measures are in place to prevent a spread through court sessions by having case mention dates done digitally and prisoners quarantined or isolated after attending court physically. So are workers being careful? Mr. Samuda says yes, except for vaccine hesitancy.
The level of hesitancy was a little disheartening, but our first target is to ensure that all of our correctional officers that want vaccines get access to it. We believe that that will help the hesitancy subside when they see their co-workers itself, definitely have a few side effects, but come back to work stronger and more protected. We do intend, however, towards the end of this week into next week, with support from the JDF medical team, to offer significantly more access both to our correctional officers and indeed to our most vulnerable inmates vaccine access.
India's total COVID-19 cases have passed 18 million after another world record number of daily infections as grave diggers worked around the clock to bury victims, and hundreds more were cremated in makeshift pyres in parks and parking lots. India reported 379,257 new infections and 3,645 new deaths yesterday, the highest number of fatalities in a single day since the start of the pandemic. However, medical experts believe India's true COVID-19 numbers may be 5 to 10 times greater than the official tally.
Shruti Saha is inconsolable after hearing of her mother's death while waiting in line to get oxygen for her. "I want to go to my mother," she cries repeatedly. Earlier, she described just how difficult it is to get help in Delhi.
We have been out of our house since 2 in the morning. There's no oxygen available in all of Delhi, and after a lot of running around, we finally got here by around 4. Initially, there was a queue on the other side. Then we were told that we had to come to the front side and queue here. My mother is very ill, and for the past 2 days, we've been trying to get a bed in so many hospitals in Delhi.
Shruti's mother is just one of the 3,645 people who died in India on Wednesday. Delhi remains one of the worst affected states. Its leader said despite trying their best, every hospital in the capital is overburdened and treating people beyond their capacity. That's why this space in central New Delhi, where political rallies and religious festivals are usually held, is being converted into a makeshift hospital.
This is where the government is constructing a 500-bed intensive care unit facility. It hopes to have an extra 1,200 ICU beds in the capital within 2 weeks, but that's still nowhere near enough to meet the numbers needed right now.
Delhi's cases are going up by more than 20,000 each day, and health experts say around 15% of people with the virus need to be in hospital. The US State Department tweeted saying access to medical care is severely limited due to COVID-19 cases, and US citizens who wish to depart India should use the available commercial flights now. But despite the country going through its worst crisis in its modern history, the last phase of regional elections went ahead in the state of West Bengal on Thursday, where 4 candidates have already died from the virus.
In the context of a raging pandemic, it's unconscionable that people should be called to vote today, particularly in the city of Calcutta, where the positivity rate of RT-PCR tests is currently at 50%.
Health experts say the devastating scenes witnessed in other states will be repeated in West Bengal as a result of the large political gatherings.
The morning report will be Morning Barbados, and we'll be sharing the story of a man who one day said, "I can't really explain how I felt when I realized I had one leg. It was like one day I had 2 legs, the next day I had one." His harrowing story he'll share with us coming up. We'll also find out from Dr. Charleston Brathwaite what is his 11th defining moment. He's written a book. He'll join us to share a little bit more about that as well. And we'll be checking in with the Caribbean Chambers of Commerce to find out how they're coming together to the assistance of their counterparts in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That's among everything else we have to share with you coming up on Morning Barbados. This is the Morning Report. We'll take a break and we'll be back with more after this. One to 3% economic growth has been forecast for Barbados for the remainder of the year. Central Bank Governor Cleviston Haynes made that forecast during the bank's economic performance review for January to March 2021. Lorna Jones has more.
A slight increase of 1 to 3% growth in economic activity is expected for Barbados over 2021. The Governor of the Central Bank of Barbados, Cleviston Haynes, says the forecast, which is weaker than that of 3 months ago, reflects the continued impact of COVID-19 on the country. This is particularly seen in the tourism sector.
The economy recorded its 4th successive quarterly double-digit decline in activity as tourist arrivals plummeted on account of the unfavorable environment for travel. The weakened tourism sector, together with the fall in other economic activities and depressed private spending, contributed to an estimated 19.8% fall in output. Tourism output plunged by an estimated 96%.
Mr. Haynes says the growth over 2021 will largely be influenced by Barbados's ability to control the spread of COVID-19 and the resumption of activity in tourism, which will also be affected by external factors.
As more individuals are vaccinated both locally and abroad, international air and cruise traffic is expected to resume gradually, boosting demand for ancillary services. The impact of the ongoing volcanic eruptions and resulting ashfalls on growth is likely to be muted, but downside risks remain from future major eruptions. The economy remains heavily dependent on tourism. To accelerate the recovery and facilitate market diversification, tourism planners will need to explore opportunities for targeting source markets that have a low incidence of the virus and/or high levels of vaccinated citizens.
As of March 2021, the debt-to-GDP ratio has increased by 36 percentage points to 153%. The central bank governor notes while government has enough of a buffer to meet external obligations, factors including weak demands for exports and rising oil prices are expected to prevent further accumulation of international reserves this year.
The gross international reserves decreased by 86 billion during the first quarter to 2.6 billion. The lower earnings from tourism resulted in the bank buying less foreign exchange from banks, In addition, government made increased purchases of foreign exchange to cover debt repayments on goods and services, including for vaccines and other COVID-related expenses. The decline in tourism earnings was accompanied by lower exports, but reduced outflows for imports and other payments cushioned the impact on reserves. The demand for foreign exchange at banks actually fell by 24%, allowing the reserve buffers that were accumulated the previous year to stay stable.
In the medium term, Mr. Haynes has recommended a focus on structural reforms, which will facilitate the ease of doing business and improve competitiveness. Lorna Jones, CBC News.
Barbados is pushing for accelerated action across the globe in effort to tackle the increasing threat of antimicrobial resistance. AMR occurs when bacteria, viruses, fungi and parasites change over time, and as a result of drug resistance, antibiotics and other antimicrobial medicines become ineffective. Prime Minister Myanmar Motley, who is co-chair of the One Health Global Leaders Group on AMR, told a high-level interactive dialogue of the General Assembly the challenges are numerous, and she called on leaders to commit to the fight.
We have all experienced the health, the social and the economic impact of this awful COVID-19 pandemic. But we can also see the opportunity that it presents us to address the issue of antimicrobial resistance, which threatens literally to be the greatest killer of human beings by the year 2050. And how do we do it? By integrating the response to AMR into future pandemic response and into our preparedness plans, as you've heard from all who have spoken before me. We cannot afford to let this opportunity pass us by. Political will, as usual, is critical. We need leadership from the top. But leadership must also come from the grassroots in order to convey the gravity of the situation.
More than a year after receiving severance letters, former employees of Liat 1974 Limited in Barbados are pleading for financial assistance. This as they await millions of dollars in severance pay. Liat Briggs has that story.
Raw emotion as former Liat staffers reflect on the financial hardship they continue to face. Former head of flight attendants Kellyanne Franklin described her desperate financial situation while making an emotional plea for closure.
Like household, both of us were laid off, both. So think about it, for a year, we have been trying to make ends meet. We've been successful because we have had savings. But when you still think about it, all of our savings are depleted. How many people can sit here and say that they could afford to meet their everyday expenses, pay for a mortgage, pay for cars, pay for loans, pay for insurance, pay for all the other things that you would have committed to when you had a job? How many people can sit here and say they could afford it? I'm sure not one of you guys in here can say that. It is hard. It is very difficult. And even if we may say, you know what, the reality is we have to brush off and we have to pick up ourselves and move on. The fact that we still have had no closure, it is very difficult.
Severed Liat employees based in Barbados are pleading with shareholder governments to foot approximately 10 million Barbados dollars in outstanding severance payments owed by the government of Antigua and Barbuda. While the employees are fully aware of the economic challenges currently faced by shareholders, former Liat pilot Captain Neil Cave is asking for the government of Barbados to intervene in the matter.
We don't have anywhere else to turn, basically. And it's a situation that, if not fixed soon, if something doesn't happen soon, the destruction that is caused to the former workers of Liat who serve this region so diligently, it will be irreparable, I believe, and it already is in some cases. So we are asking and pleading and begging and urging our government to come to our aid and come to our aid very, very shortly, because it is a very critical situation.
Over 90 Barbados-based Liat employees have yet to receive their severance payments. This includes pilots, flight attendants, and engineers. Liat Briggs, CBC News.
The conviction and sentencing of former government minister Donville Inniss will not affect his parliamentary pension. CBC's investigations revealed that the Retiring Allowance Legislation Service Act does not speak of any changes in pension arrangements because of criminal conviction. Chapter 12A instructs that once a former legislator paid towards a contributory pension and has reached the age of 50, they are eligible to receive said pension. A former legislator can also opt for gratuity with a reduced pension. On Tuesday, the 55-year-old Inniss was sentenced by a New York judge to serve 2 years in prison and also 2 years of supervised release at the end of his jail term. Major flooding, landslides and mud flows occurred in St. Vincent and the Grenadines yesterday following heavy rainfall. In an advisory, the National Emergency Management Organization noted the red zone could be impacted by mud flows owing to ash deposits in the area. It also said the absence of trees means material will find its way down the valleys. The local Met Office, meanwhile, noted unsuitable conditions were being enhanced by a favorable upper-level atmosphere. Rainfall accumulations ranging from 3 to 5 inches already occurred from some parts of the country yesterday, and a further 2 inches with isolated high amounts are possible into today. For the first time in Trinidad and Tobago's history, the Ministry of National Security has installed electronic monitoring devices on an offender. The ankle monitor will allow the state to monitor the individual's whereabouts for the next year. The device was installed by the ministry's electronic monitoring unit following a High Court order on April the 23rd, which granted the offender bail on a condition of compliance with the parameters of the electronic monitoring program. That individual is required to wear that device 24 hours a day for the duration of the period. Failure to comply with any of the terms of the order will result in the revocation of bail and immediate withdrawal from the electronic monitoring program. China has launched an unmanned module containing living quarters for 3 crew on a permanent space station that it plans to complete by the end of 2022. It's one of the 3 main components of what could be China's first self-developed space station, rivaling the only other station in the service, the International Space Station. The ISS is backed by leading countries including the United States, Russia and Japan, as China was barred from participating by the US.
The launch of a new era in Chinese space exploration. The core module of China's first permanent space station, Tianhe, or Heavenly Harmony, launched from the southern island of Hainan on Thursday morning. 10 minutes after liftoff, it successfully separated from its Long March 5B rocket. It's the first of 11 missions needed to complete the space station next year. The 17-meter-long module contains the station's control center, power supply, and living quarters for 3 astronauts. Water on board will be fully recycled. It will be followed by 2 other modules designed to house a range of scientific experiments, including in quantum physics, biotechnology, and microgravity. 12 astronauts are training to live on board Tianhe on 6-month rotations. The first are expected to arrive in June. China began plans to build the station in the 1990s, but they were almost sidelined by the coronavirus outbreak.
The construction of our space station was affected by the pandemic at the earlier stage, but we worked hard to minimize the impact.
China has made no secret of its ambition to become an international space power to rival the US. It's been collaborating closely with Russia to this end. Washington has banned Beijing from working with NASA because of security concerns. In 2003, China became the 3rd country after the US and Russia to put a man in space. Beijing has since launched a number of spacewalks and crewless missions, including the retrieval of lunar rocks in December. It's expected to land a probe on Mars later this year, and there are plans to eventually work with the Russian space agency to build a research station on the moon.
In the coming years, we'll carry out the 4th phase of China's lunar exploration program, explore asteroids and deep space, as well as develop heavy lift carrier rockets. All these are included in our plan.
China's space station is a fraction of the size of the International Space Station. That's the only one currently in orbit. China is excluded from using it. Several Western governments are concerned Beijing will use its space technology to expand China's military. but its leaders say its progress in space exploration will only be used for peaceful means.
Unidentified attackers fired rockets at 2 Myanmar bases yesterday, but there were no casualties and only minor damage, in another sign of deteriorating security since the military overthrew an elected government 3 months ago.
Some groups inside that Karen-held territory in Myanmar, they have been reporting at least 6, possibly as many as 9 airstrikes have been carried out since that attack on that outpost. Now, once they overran that territory around the outpost, pushing the Myanmar army out, the KNU soldiers have occupied that area, and even today there was some footage of them actually marching along the banks, patrolling along the banks there. Now, what this means is that this is kind of a continuation of what we've seen over the last month. Back on March 27th, there were some airstrikes, and some people in the Karen-held territory came across the river here into Thailand because they're worried about more airstrikes and retaliation and increased fighting. And this has kind of been going on since then. But what we saw on Tuesday really kind of launched us into a new round of airstrikes. And there's concern what that might prompt going down the line. We know that the KNU has a lot of soldiers in that area. There's even thought that they might try to move on to another outpost for the Myanmar army, but right now we know for certain that one area they focused on Tuesday, they control the whole stretch along that river that serves as the border between Myanmar and Thailand. So when you see these kind of ethnic armed organizations like we saw in the Karen-held territory and up in the north in the Kachin area, so they are kind of stepping up. So it's a concern that, what's going to happen there. It's kind of, you're seeing the uprising, if you will, on the streets across Myanmar, but also now in these territories along the border areas on the east side and up in the north.
In sports now, Barbadian medium pacer Shanika Bruce is among 8 uncapped players selected for a UW CWI women's high performance camp starting this weekend in Antigua. 30 players have been named for the estimated month-long camp at the Coolidge Cricket Ground. This will be the second such camp in 2021, assembled under the guidance of head coach Courtney Walsh and his support team. With the ICC Women's World Cup qualifiers now rescheduled for December, Walsh has devised a program to maximize team preparations ahead of the international cricket and the qualifiers later in the year. Also among the players called up are uncapped teenagers Zayda James of St. Lucia and Janelia Glasgow of St. Vincent and Grenadines. James is a left-arm medium pacer, while Glasgow is a right-arm medium pacer. The others are Rashida Williams, Kanisha Isaac, Mandy Mangru and Rachel Vincent. Meanwhile, making a return to the camp is Barbadian wicket-keeper Kaisia Knight. Owing to the pandemic, regional tournaments have not been held as yet. However, CBC Sports has been reliably informed that a planned women's tour of Sri Lanka is also in the works, while the women's regional competition is slated for September-October this year, with the winner representing the Caribbean at the Commonwealth Games in 2022. The deadline for the Commonwealth Games qualifier is October the 31st this year. That's it for sports. Now take a look at forecast conditions as recorded at the Met Office this morning. That'll be coming up in just a little while right here, but overcast conditions prevailed yesterday, and the forecast is perhaps that overcast conditions will also prevail today. Perhaps a little bit of lightning, we'll soon find out. But a casual look outside will reveal that those overcast skies are still prevailing over the island, so we want you to be very careful. We've heard the news of what's been happening with our neighbors in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as they too have been impacted by the heavy downfall of rain. And certainly we want you to be careful there in St. Vincent as well. So overcast conditions still prevailing, our look from our outside cam here at the CBC. At the moment, it's showers at 25 degrees Celsius. The winds are coming from the east at 26 kilometers an hour. Heading to the sea today, expect a high tide, a low tide at 24 minutes to 1 this afternoon, and a high tide scheduled for 4 minutes after 7 this evening. Seas are calm to moderate in open water, swells up to 1.5 meters but remaining steady. Barbados today, mostly cloudy to overcast with the occasional brief scattered light shower and the periods of light rain. while tonight a mix of clear skies and clouds with the occasional intermittent scattered light showers. For the Lesser Antilles, today and tonight, cloudy to overcast with some scattered showers. And now a look at your international cities. And that's the Morning Report. I'm Pearson Bowen.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Barbados, get up. Good morning. Good morning, Barbados. Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning. Morning, morning, morning. Good morning to you. Good morning. Morning, Barbados. Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning. Morning, Barbados. Good morning. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Morning to you.
Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, the 30th of April, 2021. I'm Pearson Bowen. Welcome to Morning Barbados. To those of you joining us on our Facebook stream, CBC Barbados, glad you could be with us today. And for those of you on our YouTube channel, our channel is Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation. Welcome. Good to have you company as well. Cindy Celeste will join us a little later on today. She's our celebrated poet, and she'll be talking about her experience overseas in that Read That competition. We'll hear from her. Also today, we'll be connecting with Tedra. Tedra, there in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As you know, they've been impacted by heavy rains now, and so conditions are feeling as though they're slipping away a little bit. So we'll talk to her about the very latest there. And there's so much more to share with you today. But let's get started by looking at the ongoing works of the Chambers of Commerce and how they're coming together to lend assistance to our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent. Joining us this morning from Barbados, the Executive Director of the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Misha Loban-Clark. Good morning to you, Misha. And from St. Vincent, we have Tony Regisford, who is the Executive Director of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Morning, both of you. I'm going to start with you, Tony. I want you to paint for me the picture of just how the pandemic and now the volcano eruption and now the rains have really impacted the chamber there and your organization.
Well, good morning, Barbados. Of course, you've outlined three events that certainly does not argue well for life and livelihoods and certainly the business community. The pandemic is very much still with us. You know, the management issues that we have with that are very similar to what you have in Barbados. Unfortunately, in St. Vincent, we have more of a vaccine hesitancy here than I observe that you have in Barbados. So that's creating some issues in terms of vaccine take-up and our acceleration to herd immunity. Clearly, the pandemic has affected the business community in very much the same way as it has affected you in Barbados. The same sectors that were more impacted, the tourism sector, hospitality, recreation, leisure, in particular, you know, the beauty and body care type people, and also retail. That has been seriously impacted here in St. Vincent. So we are in a situation where we're experiencing an economic downturn and challenging times. Now, as you rightly outlined, on top of that, we've had the volcano looming and eventually erupted about 3 weeks ago, 2.5, 3 weeks ago. And that certainly was a sight to behold, if I should put it another way. I use that term because on the one hand, it was nature in all its splendor. If you saw those ash plumes up in the air, you had no choice but to look in awe. You know, it's not something you've seen in the movies. You're seeing it right there in front of you.
Yes.
Quite fantastic. But on the other hand, the impact, you know, the ash fallout, you felt that in Barbados as well. So you've got a first-hand experience of what we experienced here. I think most of the disruption from the volcano in terms of business activity was from that ashfall. The ashfall came heavily down in the south of the island as well. And the south and mid parts of the island is largely the commercial sector. Now, of course, you know that we had to evacuate up to 20,000 people from what we call the red zone. And the red zone is immediately at the foothills of the volcano, and the volcano is north. So that, in a nutshell, is what happened to the people in the red zone. They had to move out, and this is where the issue is.
Mm-hmm.
How do we cater for those people? How do we take care of them? The relief effort, and that's where all the energy is going right now. We've got 20,000 people to look after, and that's where all the energy is going right now. I want to get quickly into how the Chamber of Commerce.
I'm going to come to that. I am going to come to that, but I wanted you to paint the picture for us, because sometimes from where we sit, we don't quite get all of the complexities that you're managing there. Ours is somewhat, we know ours, but we don't quite know yours. So I wanted you to paint that picture for us. And naturally, with a combination of all of these forces, there's going to be fallout. We've seen here closure of some businesses. I don't know if you have that to that same extent there in St. Vincent.
We've had businesses certainly experiencing reduced demand, and some people have, hit the pause button. The difference, I think, between your economy and our economy is that you are surely more tourism dependent, and while we are as well, we're not as dependent on the tourism sector as you are. But surely, whatever tourism sector we had virtually came to a standstill, So there were layoffs, but not total closures. The downstream businesses that were impacted, I imagine some of them fell off. But in the retail sector and the manufacturing sector and so on, those continued. We never really had a complete lockdown. So we never shut the place down entirely. So we were able to keep the wheel turning.
Right.
Which, for businesses was quite good.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, we've got two compounding factors here. The pandemic and now the volcanic eruptions. And while we are in the midst of concentrating on the relief, the next phase obviously is coming to terms with the economic fallout.
Absolutely. So Misha, from Barbados' point of view now, this is where you guys have stepped up and you're working with your partners in St. Vincent through Mr. Regisford. So tell me, what is it that the Barbados Chamber of Commerce has been able to do and how you're effecting that difference really to St. Vincent?
Certainly, Pearson. Tony has painted a very graphic picture, and we recognize that the devastation is extensive. We also recognize that the post-volcanic recovery certainly will be a long one for the country. And, David Rudder speaks of rallying around the West Indies, and it's not just about rallying around cricket. We recognize within the network of Caribbean Chambers of Commerce that our network is powerful enough that once the call was made, the local Barbados Chamber of Commerce was responsive. We felt a responsibility to support our neighboring island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in this moment, in its crisis, in its time of need. And we reached out to members of the business community, and certainly we have at the Chamber been very, very, very heartened by the responses of our members in the retail and distribution sector, in financial services. With our mobilization effort by the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry, our members have donated financial support, emergency supplies, and of course cases of water. That was one of the top priorities that we understood was needed. We have been working through certainly our local emergency management organization, the DEM here in Barbados, and we have been and continue, just up to yesterday, Pearson, we had other members reaching out to tell us, they are joining the call. It's really a global call. It's really a regional call to action, and the Barbados Chamber has responded accordingly. I'd just like to also mention that subsequent to what we did in terms of mobilizing support for St. Vincent, we became aware of our own crisis locally, and I'd just like to say that the Barbados Chamber our members have also responded. I'm aware that several of our companies have been donating water and water tanks to support our own local initiative here in Barbados as well.
That's good to know, and I'm really glad, I'm heartened to think that, together as a region, we can try to make a difference to each of us as well. So from St. Vincent's point of view now, Tony, when on receipt of this assistance, how do you see its distribution? How do you see its impact making a difference?
Well, let me just first endorse or reiterate what Misha said. The whole smooth flow of cooperation actually was quite admirable, because had it not been for the CARICHAM network, which is the Caribbean network of chambers, I think the level of organization in terms of the flow of information to the private sector across the Caribbean may have been a bit more disjointed. And so that was a very good demonstration of what organizations across the Caribbean, as they say, birds of a feather, so all chambers, in this instance, can do to effect something positive action. And that really worked well. As Misha said, I activated the call through the chairperson of CARICHAM, and then he spanned that out to all the chambers in the network, and Barbados was one of the very early responders. And as we're talking about Barbados, I have to say that we're overwhelmed with the response of the private sector. It was quite moving, actually. To see how the private sector, got in action to heed our call. And I think the Barbados Chamber of Industry and Commerce did a fantastic job in that, the way that was coordinated. What Misha said was also important from a coordination standpoint. We weren't flooded through various avenues. All those things that the Chamber was able to coordinate in Barbados was channeled through the country's response. As Misha said, she was working with the local emergency management organization there, and that is important, because if you lose coordination of getting the relief efforts going, then you get a chaotic situation, and it's really not helpful.
Right.
So that was actually very good. So when we got the Barbados response in total, a very significant component of that was what the Chamber of Commerce in Barbados was able to do through the members in the private sector there. You ask me, the impact of that on the ground, tremendous. Misha mentioned water. Water was within the first 10 days or so of the explosive eruptions. That was really an immediate need. And I need to explain that our water supplies were virtually shut down. Not because there was a lack of water, but because our collection systems, the Water Authority here did not want the water to get contaminated. and so they had to shut it off rather than getting all that ash that you experience in Barbados. Imagine that getting into your water system. Certainly not a good situation. Right. So we had to have the water shut down here. Unlike you in Barbados, your water collection is underground. We are above ground, as it were. So, while you don't have the rivers that we use for recreation here, in this instance, your lack of rivers and your underground water served you very well.
As a benefit. Tony, it's an ongoing situation. It's an ongoing situation. We don't have a lot of time at the moment. But Misha, I want to quickly come back to you because this is going to be an ever-evolving situation. It doesn't end after this first assistance. How is the Barbados Chamber of Commerce planning to sustain assistance at all?
It is ongoing. One, we continue to remain in close contact, certainly with this, Tony and the St. Vincent Chamber, so that we can continue to be aware of what the needs are, because you are correct, Pearson. It is a very fluid situation. The donations and the support from our membership continues. We continue to engage our members for support. They too recognize that it is an ongoing process, and only yesterday another member reached out from the financial sector to say they would like to be making a cash donation to the chamber, and that will also go towards directly towards the relief initiative that the Barbados Chamber has ongoing. We continue, our members are continually sensitized, Pearson, to the fact that we are in an age of even a situation with St. Vincent clearly speaks to the fact that the small island development states, we remain so vulnerable to disasters like hurricane and the volcanic eruption. And we stand ready as corporate entities, recognizing that we have a corporate social responsibility to support our local efforts here in Barbados, but also throughout the region. I say, Pearson, that there was no doubt that the ashfall affected us here in Barbados, businesses, individuals. But it really pales in comparison to what continues to happen to the people of St. Vincent. Tony says it's 200 people that they have to now be giving priority attention to, persons displaced. And so we remain very centered. The Barbados Chamber is not just about supporting the interests of our own members, but also looking outward to how we can lend support to others. And I must say, our membership within the Barbados Chamber of Commerce are very, very supportive in that regard, and so we continue to just remain committed to supporting the efforts and the need that exists in St. Vincent. Tony and I are in constant contact. The network of the Caribbean Chambers of Commerce, certainly our communication linkages are very strong. We meet monthly, we engage via our WhatsApp group. So Tony keeps us up to date in terms of, even up to yesterday, we were made aware of the recent flooding and the impact that has been happening. So we realize that it's not about, they're not just dealing with the volcanic eruption, they're dealing with other things that the impact of other natural things that are uncontrolled, just like the flooding. Yes. It has brought on its own challenges to the country, and so we are in there's no doubt, Pearson, we're in a very challenging year, a very challenging time for for not just Barbados, but the entire region. But I think the difference that will help us to be resilient and that will help us to survive the challenges that we face day to day lies in the strength of the people of the Caribbean.
Absolutely.
The fact that we're so unified and we respond to the call whenever it happened in Dominica, it has happened in Bahamas. You know, the network continues to rally around each other, and I think that is the strength of what we have as a
network,
as a Caribbean.
Right.
You know,
I can't disagree with you, but I'm so thankful that you're able to join us this morning, because we have to go now. Michelle Loban-Clark, who is the Executive Director of the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry here. And thank you, Tony Regisford, as well, the Executive Director of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Chamber of Commerce. And Tony, we wish you well, you and your organization. Misha, thank you for your organization coming together to doing such a fantastic work. We're very proud of you. Thank you so much. Morning Barbados continues right after this break.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
Next, the story of a young man who says, as long as you have life, it's a blessing. You just got to live it. Torian Clark is his name, as we take our time now to look at limb loss and limb difference. Good morning to you, Torian.
Hi, good morning.
How are you today?
I'm quite fine, and you?
Good, I'm well. Thank you for asking. Now, your life changed following an accident, and you woke up and you saw that you didn't have all of your legs. How was that for you?
Pretty life-changing, I believe. Even people that didn't go through it, I believe, even thinking about it, you can just think and at least feel how life-changing it was. To wake up basically the next morning, still unaware that my leg was amputated. So I just got up, laying down, in pain. Saw my mom, my dad, doctor came in, speak to me, but all of that time they were speaking to me. It still didn't hit me, neither did they tell me as yet that my foot was amputated. So after realizing that it was amputated, that is when life took a really different turn. I never had so much emotions all in one.
Wow.
It was really a very traumatic experience.
So how are you coping now, though? Have you accepted where you are, and if so, how then are you also using that acceptance to assist others?
Yes, I've accepted how I am right now. It's a part of my life. Part of the amputee community, and how it has impacted my life and how it has changed. I'm now a motivational speaker. I went back to my old school, the hospital, and just different people in general who reach out to me to have those words of encouragement in regards to what I went through. They probably wanted to give up, but seeing me and hearing my story and then what I had to share with them, it definitely helped a lot. So on that journey, when I realized that basically was my call, that is what I continue to do to this day.
So what is it that you say? Because I'm in the audience, and you're coming to address me to motivate me. So what do you say?
Basically, it could range a lot of different things. It could be, let's use an example of someone wanted to give up, going through a lot of pain, probably in the hospital. Let me use that as another example. I just go talk to people, let them know that, hey, I know you may be going through pain, but remember, for you to be feeling this pain would mean that you have life, and it's a blessing. And then I just basically share my story, because within the snap of a finger, I could have lost my life like 3 times within that one night. One on the scene, one on route to hospital, and at the hospital. So I just draw those examples from that one night to let them know that yes, we're going through pain, but pain doesn't mean it's the end of life. As long as you have life, there are a lot of opportunities. So yeah, that's what I basically share with them.
It's so interesting how you're able now to pivot your way of thinking into something very, very positive, because every day you see your difference. And you know, yes. How are you coping with that emotionally, the difference?
Emotionally, to this day, I would not tell anyone that I'm 100%, because there are some things that would remind me of what I used to do before 100% that I'm now not able to do 100%. So emotionally, it's like a 85-90% get over that bridge in regards to this situation. But as long as I have life again, I remember the Almighty, because without Him, I would not have been here. So that alone, that one line alone, that last part, the Almighty, I just give thanks for every day of life.
Amen on that one. Torian, I wish we are going to have more time. We can't do it today, so we'll make an arrangement to connect with you a little later on so we can bring you back to hear more of your story and to share your words of positive reinforcement as well. So Torian, thanks for joining us right now, but our producer will be contacting you to make arrangement for another occasion, all right?
Not a problem. And thank you for having me.
His name is Torian Clark. Much more to share from him for sure, and the time didn't allow us to be able to do adequately enough this morning, but we'll be having him back on the show very, very soon to hear more from him and how he's coping and his words of inspiration for you. Speaking of inspiration, let's take a look at today's good decision of the day, brought to you by Glucerna, those nutrients to support your immune system. Now, we want you to envision the consequences of your actions. Look ahead and think about what will really happen if you take this course of action you're considering. See in your mind the consequences of the decision. If what you are envisaging is acceptable, then even desirable, this will help solidify your choice. If it is negative, are you willing to go ahead anyway? Is the likely outcome worth the risk or fallout for the ultimate good? So today, envision the consequences of your action. That's our good decision of the day today, brought to you by Glucerna, with those nutrients to support your immune system. We're going to take a break right here. When we come back, the news.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
7 o'clock in Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. Time for us to take a look at the news now. 15 of the 17 new positive COVID-19 cases in Barbados recorded on Wednesday have been linked to the psychiatric hospital. The confirmation came from Health Minister Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Bostic last night on the News Night on CBC TV8 as he revealed the circumstances that led to the discovery of the positive cases among 14 patients and 1 staff.
On Tuesday, April 27th, a 42-year-old male who was recently discharged from the psychiatric hospital where he resided over the past 3 months, presented to the Winston Scott Polyclinic with respiratory symptoms. On testing, it was revealed that he was COVID positive, and immediate testing commenced on the ward from where he was discharged. This testing involved all clinical staff and the entire patient population. The ward comprises 63 clients and 25 members of staff. Of the 32 persons who were tested last night from the affected ward, 14 clients and 1 staff member have tested positive and are in isolation. The Ministry of Health will manage these 14 clients on site, whereas the staff member will be managed at Harrison Point facility. Further testing of the remaining clients and staff was completed today. The Ministry of Health has determined that based on the level of exposure, all staff on the affected ward will be placed in quarantine for 5 days, after which a repeat test will be required to exit quarantine. This approach, endorsed by public health officials, is similar to what obtained at the geriatric hospital in February of this year. Contact tracing is also being conducted in earnest, and it is similar to what obtained at the geriatric hospital in February. Broad-based precautionary testing is on the way at the psychiatric hospital for all other clients and categories of staff.
1 to 3% economic growth has been forecast for Barbados for the remainder of the year. Central Bank Governor Cleviston Haynes made the forecast during the bank's economic review for January to March this year. Lorna Jones has more.
A slight increase of 1 to 3% growth in economic activity is expected for Barbados over 2021. And Governor of the Central Bank of Barbados, Cleviston Haynes, says the forecast, which is weaker than that of 3 months ago, reflects the continued impact of COVID-19 on the country. This is particularly seen in the tourism sector.
The economy recorded its 4th successive quarterly double-digit decline in activity as tourist arrivals plummeted on account of the unfavorable environment for travel. The weakened tourism sector, together with the fall in other economic activities and depressed private spending, contributed to an estimated 19.8% fall in output. Tourism output plunged by an estimated 96%.
Mr. Haynes says the growth over 2021 will largely be influenced by Barbados's ability to control the spread of COVID-19 and the resumption of activity in tourism, which will also be affected by external factors.
As more individuals are vaccinated both locally and abroad, international air and cruise traffic is expected to resume gradually, boosting demand for ancillary services. The impact of the ongoing volcanic eruptions and resulting ash falls on growth is likely to be muted, but downside risks remain from future major eruptions. The economy remains heavily dependent on tourism. To accelerate the recovery and facilitate market diversification, tourism planners will need to explore opportunities for targeting source markets that have a low incidence of the virus and/or high levels of vaccinated citizens.
As of March 2021, the debt-to-GDP ratio has increased by 36 percentage points to 153%. The central bank governor notes while government has enough of a buffer to meet external obligations, Factors including weak demands for exports and rising oil prices are expected to prevent further accumulation of international reserves this year.
The gross international reserves decreased by 86 billion during the first quarter to 2.6 billion. The lower earnings from tourism resulted in the bank buying less foreign exchange from banks. In addition, government made increased purchases of foreign exchange to cover debt repayments on goods and services, including for vaccines and other COVID-related expenses. The decline in tourism earnings was accompanied by lower exports, but reduced outflows for imports and other payments cushioned the impact on reserves. The demand for foreign exchange at banks actually fell by 24%, allowing the reserve buffers that were accumulated the previous year to stay stable.
In the medium term, Mr. Haynes has recommended a focus on structural reforms, which will facilitate the ease of doing business and improve competitiveness. Lorna Jones, CBC News.
Barbados is pushing for accelerated action across the globe in an effort to tackle the increasing threat of antimicrobial resistance. AMR occurs when bacteria, viruses, fungi and parasites change over time. And as a result of drug resistance, antibiotics and other antimicrobial medicines become ineffective. Prime Minister Myanmar Motley, who is co-chair of the One Health Global Leaders Group on AMR, told a high-level interactive dialogue of the General Assembly the challenges are numerous and she's called on leaders to commit to the fight.
We have all experienced the health, the social and the economic impact of this awful COVID-19 pandemic. But we can also see the opportunity that it presents us to address the issue of antimicrobial resistance, which threatens literally to be the greatest killer of human beings by the year 2050. And how do we do it? By integrating the response to AMR into future pandemic response and into our preparedness plans, as you've heard from all who have spoken before me. We cannot afford to let this opportunity pass us by. Political will, as usual, is critical. We need leadership from the top. But leadership must also come from the grassroots in order to convey the gravity of the situation.
Well, that's our news until now. We'll have more news coming up at 12 noon today in the CBC Newsday. Morning Barbados continues after this break.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
Just a little look at the insight of what's else to come here on Morning Barbados. We'll be turning the next pages in the chapters of the Book of Life of Times of Dr. Charleston Brathwaite. That's coming up in just a little bit. But now at 10 minutes after 7 o'clock, it is time for today's Crumbs question of the day. You get a chance today to be a winner by simply calling us on 228-5562 or 228-5563 to answer correctly today's Crumbs question of the day. Should you win, you win handsomely. Remember, crumb is delicious down to the very last crumb. So the question is, what is the price of a snack box from Crispy's Fried Chicken? See if you know it. What is the price of a snack box from Crispy's Fried Chicken? Haha. Call us right now on 228-5562 or 228-5563. Correct the answer and you become a winner instantly. What's the price of a snack box at Crispy's Fried Chicken? Get on the phone and get cracking. Now, time for us to take a look at our next chapter. This time we're turning the pages of the book Memories of China, My 11th Defining Moment. And I thought, that's an interesting title. Let's meet today with the author of that book, Dr. Charleston Brathwaite. Good morning to you, Dr. Brathwaite.
Good morning, Pearson, and good morning, Barbados.
Good. Thank you for joining us. Your first book, there are 10 defining moments. Now you're to the 11th, your Memories of China. Talk to me about the experience there in China, because that must have been quite life-changing.
Well, let me begin by saying that my 10 defining moments, which was launched in 2012, gave a view of my life story, my life journey. And therefore, when I retired, I thought that I would come home and rest. And then I got a telephone call by the then Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honorable Frundle Stewart, inviting me to be the second resident ambassador of Barbados in China. And so on the basis of that, I spent 4 years in Beijing, China. And I thought that returning to Barbados, I should share with Barbados, with Barbadians, with my family, the unique experience, the richness of that experience, because I firmly believe, as has been expressed by our Prime Minister, that we Barbadians should become global citizens, that we should begin to understand and engage the world. And engaging the world does not just mean engaging England, Canada, and the United States, but engaging the world. There are 109 countries in the world. And we should also recognize that defining orientation that was given by our first Prime Minister, the late Right Honorable Walton Barrow, who said that we should be friends of all and satellites of none. In that context, my book, therefore, is to try to share an experience of 4 years in Beijing, in China, and to let Barbadians understand a little bit more about this powerhouse, financial and technological powerhouse that is emerging in the East. And so the book is about the experience in China, the dimensions of the experience, diplomatic, social, cultural, technological. I have referred all of these dimensions in my book called Memories of China.
Often what we know of China is what we hear on the news. And so you now found yourself in China, based in China. You've been there 4 years. What did you learn about it that the news didn't tell?
Well, to a large extent, a lot of what we hear about China in this part of the world is by Western media. Western media that understands China differently from living there, in my opinion. China is quite a huge country to start with, 9.6 million square kilometers, 22,000 times the size of Barbados, and with a population of 1.3 billion people. The sheer size of China, something that we need to understand, and the role that it is playing in global economic and cultural development is something that we need to take into consideration in developing our international relationships. China is a country with 5,000 years of written history, with a diverse population, 23 provinces, 56 different groups of people. 92% of the population is made up of what is called Han Chinese, but there's another 8% of 55 different minority groups, which we need to understand. The language of China, Mandarin, is the recognized language, but all the ethnic groups have their own language, their own cultural traditions, their own food, and their own ways of being. And therefore, China is a multicultural, multilingual society that was a poor country in 1950, but it has become a financial giant, a technological powerhouse, in fact, the second largest economy in the world. And I think that these are things that we need to understand and engage in China. We need to understand the dimensions of the country, its potential for strategic relationships, and the fact that China today is influencing global decision-making throughout the world.
That's our view, as in through your eyes. But what's China's view of the Caribbean through their eyes? What did you find out about how they viewed this little tiny space known as Barbados, or this region known as the Caribbean?
Well, to a large extent, Chinese are not too familiar with the Caribbean, just as we in the Caribbean are not too familiar with China. In fact, when I first went to China, a lot of persons that I would meet would think that I was from Africa. And therefore they would say to me, well, what part of Africa are you from? And I would then have to explain to them about the Caribbean. How come black people are in this part of the world is something they never understood. So I had to give them a little orientation about our history, our journey, how we got here, and what we are about. The closest the average Chinese got to know about the Caribbean is about Cuba. They would have heard about Fidel Castro and the Cuban Revolution. And so in the process of being in China was also educating these about Barbados, this small country in the Caribbean, and also by being educated about China. So it was an exchange of information, exchange of data, an exchange of understanding, and an attempt to bridge that gap. Because for too long, distance, language, cultural differences, and geopolitics to keep us apart, when in fact, Barbados established diplomatic relations with China in 1977. But it was not until 2010 that we established an embassy in Beijing. Our first resident ambassador was Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford. And when Sir Lloyd returned home, I was asked to take up the responsibility there. So learning about China is in fact a lesson in history, because nowhere in our educational system do we have the opportunity to learn about China, neither at the elementary nor the secondary level.
But certainly
This created a great opportunity for me to understand China, and not only China, to understand Asia. Because the Asian countries, led by the Asian tigers, started off with Japan, a very lead role in the world economy after the Second World War. And then the Asian tigers, Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and South Korea, being major players. Today, led by China, Asia has become a major player on the world stage.
One of the things that you've helped to bridge that ignorance, that gap of ignorance for a lot of us in the Caribbean and between ourselves and China, is the establishment of the Confucius Center here. And I'm sure that for you too was one of your defining moments. How has that been for you in terms of when you chalk up all the things in your life you've been able to achieve? What does that mean?
It represents, in my view, a very important part of the strategy for the gap of knowledge and communication in culture and language between China and Barbados. In fact, several students are now learning to speak Mandarin at the Institute, including a number of young people from various schools who are learning to speak Chinese. China becoming a dominant force in the world, is important that we begin to understand language of the people, especially in diplomacy. You must understand the language of the people in order to communicate correctly. And so living in China gave me the opportunity to learn some Mandarin so that I can say Zhao Chan Hao, Ni Hao Ma, and I can now communicate at the basic level with Chinese, and that opens doors, it opens up opportunities. And one of the things, Pearson, that I must mention is what we have done in the area of education. Sir Hilary Beckles signed an agreement with the Suzhou Institute in China for the development of a relationship that is now training software engineers in China. I think 20 students from the Caribbean learning software engineering in China. And this is a significant development because they are learning on the cutting edge of technology, the new information technology. They are learning to understand where the technological powerhouse has gone and where it is going. And in that sense, as we become more digital in our understanding, not only must we have persons who can in fact take advantage of the digital revolution, but we must have people who understand it and who can protect us in terms of cybercrime and cybersecurity. We need people who understand these things. And so the development of software engineers, in my view, is a very pivotal strategic move on our part, and China is partnering with us in developing software engineers, not only for Barbados, but for the entire Caribbean. We also have scholarships in the area of Chinese medicine, ecology, and various other fields that are of importance to us as we go forward and seek to play our role on the world stage.
There's so much that we could read between the pages of this book, Memories of China, My 11th Defining Moment. You've dedicated the book to your parents and your family, really, quite extensive. Why did you do that?
Because I believe that I have a commitment to them. Having had the opportunity to have this experience, I had a commitment to share it with them. But I also wanted to give thanks. And I wanted to give thanks to my parents who gave me the opportunity to get an education. I also had to recognize that their sacrifice in helping me, a poor boy, Basra Road, to go to the modern high school in the first case, to go to the University of the West, and then to go to Cornell University. These are great steps for me, and I'm eternally grateful to my parents for giving me those opportunities.
We are eternally grateful to you for documenting those memories for us, Dr. Charleston Brathwaite, in the book Memories of China, My 11th Defining Moment. The book is available island-wide at the moment. How can we access?
It is going to be available at the University of the West Indies bookshop, but soon we'll have it island-wide, and it is on Amazon, on Amazon.com, in the Kindle and payments. And this information will be communicated widely.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Brathwaite. Thank you so much for being such an outstanding Barbadian as well over your period of time so far. And I'm sure there's much more that you are still willing to contribute to the development of this country. Thank you, sir.
And I wish to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share and the opportunity to be on your program this morning.
Our immense pleasure. Thank you too. Dr. Charleston Brathwaite, author of Memories of China, My 11th Defining Moment. All right. Do we have a winner? Do we have a winner? The Crumbs question of the day is, what price of a snack box from Crispy's Fried Chicken? You got to know this. If you love Crispy's Fried Chicken, then you know that the answer is $12.99. $12.99. Absolutely right. Well done. Who has won today? Let's see. Want to call your name out loud? Emily Waith. Emily Waith. Congratulations to you, Emily. You had a snack box recently, I can tell. $12.99. You probably still have the receipt. $12.99. Congratulations to you, Emily Waith. You are a winner today. Well done indeed. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, children, you'll get a chance to call to spell it with Pediasure.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
It's time for Spell It with Pediasure. Are you going to spell it in 30 seconds?
Tots right up to 19 years old, tots to teens, you get a chance to call me now on 228-5562 or 228-5563. I'll give you a word. You'll have 30 seconds in which to spell it correctly. If you made a mistake quickly, that's all right. You still have 30 seconds. Use your time very wisely. So 228-5562 or 228-5563. Simple word, simple call. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, what's your first name?
Ariana.
Ariana, pleasure meeting you. Ariana, how old are you?
9.
Okay, Ariana, I think you can spell this word. Ariana, your word to spell for me in 30 seconds is chamber. Chamber. Are you ready?
Yes, please.
Let's go for it, Ariana. Go, girl. You have 30 seconds. Chamber.
C-H-A-M-B-E-R.
Ariana, well done. So true. Well done. You are smart, Ariana. What school do you go to?
Wilkie Cumberbatch.
Oh, just down the hill from us here. So, Ariana, I want to wish you well. I hope that you take some time while you're home this weekend to do some reading. Ariana, that's absolutely critical. And while you're reading, have a dictionary nearby so you can look for the spelling of the word and the meaning of the word as well. All right, Ariana?
Yes, please.
Now, do not put down the phone. You just hold on right there. Someone will pick up the phone and talk to you in just a moment. All right? So well done to you. Ariana, 9 years old. She spelt correctly today the word chamber. C-H-A-M-B-E-R. That's compliments of Pediasure. We're back after this.
That was Spell It, brought to you in association with Pediasure.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
After 7 o'clock now, she has fast become our reporter from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Tedra Kirby, our communication strategist. Good morning to you, Tedra.
Morning, Pearson. I didn't even know I had that title.
Well, I've just conferred it on you, so I hope that you accept it with great honor, Tedra.
It's a pleasure. How are you? Good morning,
I'm doing well today. How are you doing?
You know, the last time we spoke, I said I was exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking that back. I am officially exhausted now. I'm sure you've heard about what has happened over the last 24 hours.
Yes. You know, and we couldn't believe it. I myself was shocked when I saw the videos coming out of St. Vincent that showed mudslides, you know, landslides, houses slipping. I've seen the flooding at the airport. I've seen villages inundated by water. And I'm thinking, my goodness, what else? What else?
And I think that's how most of us feel right now. At this point, it's what else can happen? Because we feel like we have experienced everything at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Last we spoke, we mentioned the dengue, COVID, and eruption, and then you add flooding, which now includes attention having to be placed to other families who have now lost homes, properties that have now been damaged. We have an eruption cleanup, now we have a flooding cleanup.
Yes.
So we are being stretched completely thin.
I don't even know where to begin, quite frankly, honestly. But I do know that you would have had a conversation just yesterday, I believe, with Professor Richard Robertson. How did that go? What did you ask him and what did he say?
It was an interesting conversation, actually, because we got to visit the observatory yesterday. So we actually got to see Soufriere from that vantage point. And to see Soufriere while we're going through this is an experience that I really can't even put into words, because you're looking at it and you're seeing its beauty, but then you're so aware of the destruction that it's unfathomable to really try and mesh the two together. But in speaking with him yesterday, I learned so much about him as a person, because we spent a lot of time speaking about his background. He's actually from my community. So it was good to learn about his days in that community, what impacted his professional and personal development as a person, and more so understanding his connection to the volcano. We also got to actually touch some pyroclastic flow yesterday.
Wow.
And I remember speaking to Nadia saying, well, I mentioned it to Nadia and to other people, that you hear Professor Robertson and all the experts saying, stay away from these things. They're very dangerous. And we happened to be there when they brought back a sample of rocks that they had to test, only to realize that the rocks were still warm. And at that point, the rocks had already been in the open for about 30 minutes and they were still warm. And he mentioned that these rocks would have been from a previous pyroclastic flow, which could be at least a week old. So they were buried for at least 1 week. They dug them out yesterday and they were still warm to the touch when they arrived at the observatory where we were waiting on them.
And when you put all of that into context, it gets very scary, because it's very life-threatening. And I just want for our viewers to understand, when you say Nadia, you're referring to our producer of Mornin Barbados, so it's not some abstract name in the atmosphere. All right, so there were you when you got the chance to touch those hard rocks coming out of the pyroclastic flows. And suddenly, I'm sure it puts clearly into your perspective just Mother Nature, and how Mother Nature is impacting your island as well. And now that you have been able to be up close, literally, to it, to touch it, to feel it, what do you now know better?
I think the impact of just how dangerous, extremely dangerous they are, really hit home, because we're thinking they're just rocks. You know, a lot of people are like, okay, rocks are coming down. Yes, we understand they're dangerous. But not just the size of the rocks, but the fact that they were still warm, and him having to explain that they needed to use special gloves to even touch them because they were so hot. Being buried and brought down from the volcano over a week ago, possibly even 2 weeks ago, and they're still hot. It just puts everything into perspective that we cannot, even for a second, let our guard down thinking that Soufriere has done all that she needed to do. What Professor Robertson explained is that the thing about Soufriere is that once she starts, she's going to do, in his words, she's going to do everything that she needs to do until she is done. So we can't let our guard down. And we haven't had an eruption for a few days, but that doesn't reduce the danger at all. We have to be on our guard. We still cannot go back to these red zones and figure, okay, she hasn't erupted, we can resume life. No, as a matter of fact, just driving there was kind of eerie because hardly anyone was in the community. Yesterday, I remember my family being so worried, like, why are you driving? Get somebody else to drive. I'm like, no, I'm doing this interview. I'm getting there somehow.
Wow. Now, I want to look at the screen here, because when I saw this one, it moved me. If you can just slip back, if you can, I don't know, to the other video where we saw the land slippage. It was shocking. And this is where is this one that we're watching right now? This is at the airport? This is at the decommissioned airport. So this area, if I can, let me see properly. This is Arnisville. This is Arnisville. So this is the decommissioned airport, because remember we moved from E.T. Joshua to Argyle. So when they moved the airport, they converted it into a shopping center. And that entire place was flooded yesterday. I remember seeing people in Kingstown with water above their knee walking through that because they got caught in it.
wet.
Wow.
And it's yesterday I tried walking in Kingston after the floods, and I almost slipped at least 5 times because the mud was still so thick, and it was difficult to get around. And this is actually in Kingstown. This is the corporate bank that you're seeing on TV right now, and even the rats have become online sensations from this flood yesterday because everyone was running for cover. To think that we have to deal with this now while still going through an eruption, it's like, what else can possibly go wrong?
Yes, yes. And this not just impacting the red zone, it's also impacting the island, really. What are
I remember someone... Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I remember someone made a comment the other day, well, actually yesterday, stating, at this point, there is no red zone in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The entire country is a red zone right now. And they made that comment because everyone is so severely affected. The southern coast was spared from the devastating effects of the eruption. But then you add this, and no part of St. Vincent is ideal right now. Everyone is going through something because of what has happened to us over the last few weeks and yesterday.
What can you tell us about how NEMO is coping and what your Met Office are predicting for today?
I'll be honest, I don't know what the Met Office's prediction is, simply because we got in so late last night after the interview. In terms of NEMO, I think NEMO at this point is stretched. You know, you have Soufriere, you're still finding out that new families are being displaced or families having to move into shelters, and the situation is ongoing. To add this response, I truly don't know how they're going to go about it. What I will tell you is that I don't want to be in their shoes at all, because at this point, anything you do, it's always going to seem insufficient. It's always going to seem not enough. And I think that's why it's so important for volunteers and community groups and private people to really come in and do their part, because we have to approach this thing together. There is no way that one agency or the government alone can really address this situation. It's an impossible task to expect of them. And while they do have a responsibility at this point, it is every Vincentian's responsibility.
Wow. What a story to tell this morning. Tedra, thank you so much for joining us. As always, we'll be reaching out to you to stay on top of all of this. And having accepted our offer, we are eternally grateful to you. Tedra Kirby.
Well, being put on the spot. All right, Pearson, and I'll definitely get you guys some of the footage once we put it together of the interview with Professor Robertson. And just getting to speak to the rest of the team off camera is what they're doing is amazing. You know what, their life on the observatory, the simplicity of it, but the impact of it is just simply amazing. So thank you so much. Thank you, Morning Barbados. And again, if you're listening to me, please, if possible, contribute to our efforts here on the ground. We are in need of your support as best as possible.
Well said. Thank you, Tedra Kirby. Have a good day. Tedra Kirby there reporting for us out of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We're going to take a break right here. When we come back, our big international poet will join us.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
Hope you enjoyed that break with Charles Chocolate. Absolutely delicious and most of all smooth. Smooth like this, our next guest, our poet Cindy Celeste, who is now back on the island. Good morning to you, Cindy.
Morning, Pearson. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm glad to be home.
Now let's talk about a bit about that. For someone who doesn't understand, you were stuck in Texas, weren't you?
Yes, I was stuck in Texas. So on my third day in Texas, I think would have been the 9th or I can't remember, the 8th.
Mm-hmm.
We got word, myself and my traveling companion Lucy, we got word that La Soufrière had erupted. And obviously ash and airplanes don't go together. So I was getting pictures from back home. My dad called me and was like, look how outside at like 12 o'clock in the day, it looked like 10 o'clock at night. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get home. So yeah, we were stuck there for an extra 5 days.
Oh my
while
gospel.
we waited to see what would happen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you were there, no doubt, in Texas for a fantastic reason. I really want to celebrate all that you've been able to achieve because you won your 1 minute bout round, right? You were there for the Women of the World Poetry Slam.
Yes.
And girl, you
so
slammed
the Women of the
them.
World Poetry Slam,
Mhm.
is an international poetry slam. And this is the first time I've ever done a poetry slam, just by the way. And I decided to jump into the international circuit because why not? And there were 4 rounds. There were 4 rounds. There's a 4-minute round, a 1-minute round, a 2-minute round, and a 3-minute round. So I had a shaky start in the 4-minute round because I did a poem that I hadn't rehearsed nearly as much because I changed my mind at the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I actually came 5th out of 5 poets in that round. And then the 1-minute round was right after that. And I don't think they were expecting me to do what I did, but I did do a poem on claiming how it affects small island developing states. So yeah, they were blown back.
As we have been so far, having first met you, it's like, where did this girl come from? And she is so outstanding. But I can't miss this one thing hanging from your earlobe, your left earlobe. What is that? Yeah, what's that?
Black Lives Matter.
But
this is actually an earring that Lucy gave. Yeah, that Lucy gave me, and it's a thing that I do where I wear one earring. I don't know why. I like it, so that's the thing that I do.
But I love that because it's all part of the way you express your individuality, and you do it so very well. Yes. So this experience overseas to represent Barbados at this Women of the World Poetry Slam, what did it mean to you to have that opportunity?
Well, with my practice, I always I tell people I'm a Barbadian poet first, then a Caribbean poet first, then a Caribbean poet, then a world poet. So what it meant to me was the ability to go and represent my country and give my country a voice on a scene that it hasn't really touched yet. As far as I'm aware, I'm the first Barbadian to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So it meant that I was carrying my country on my back. And it was so fun because they really did not expect, and I performed all my pieces in my full Bajan dialect.
Nice.
Like, I'm not going to try to sound a way that y'all are accustomed to because that's not what we sound like in Barbados. So it really meant for me a chance to get to use that voice somewhere where it hasn't been used and give it more credence by doing so.
I love that you were so unapologetic. You know, I'm going to use my accent, so tough for water if you don't quite understand me. Because when you speak in yours, I don't question yours, so don't question mine. So I'm sure that was a part of the fight that you were presenting.
Yeah, yep.
And
I got a lot of feedback from people saying, oh, you sound like Def Jam poets. It's so unique to hear your voice because your accent is so interesting. I was like, yeah, this is how I came here to talk.
How long have you been doing poetry, do you think, now?
About 8 years now.
Mm.
I started in 2013, so yeah.
Wow, you've done so much in such a relatively short space of time when compared with so many other poets who are already on this space, and to have achieved this much has to be staggering when you really stop to think about it.
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and I was like, when I look back, I feel like I've climbed half of Mount Everest already. Because like you said, so much has happened in such a short space of time for me, and I cannot fail to mention, and I cannot neglect to mention all the people that have helped me along the way all the time, especially the NCF, because first of all, without the NCF, this trip would not have been possible for me. But then the fact that when I was stuck in Texas for an extra 5 days, they were like, "We got you covered. Just let us know what you need." And I think it's absolutely amazing. I'm still a little bit staggered. Like it always feels surreal to go overseas and perform.
Wow. When you think about it, who are some of the people whose shoulders you think you stand on because of all that they've given you until now?
Oh my goodness. Whew. I feel like that's a very long list. But majorly, I have to say Adrian Green. I have to say DJ Simmons. When I decided to sign up, I called DJ Simmons. I was like, DJ, do I? He's like, take every opportunity you can. And then when I reached out to Adrian, I said, I need somebody to help me train my voice a little bit more to make sure that I'm still getting my point across. I'm still representing Barbados well while doing so. And Adrian was like, I got you covered. Yeah, and then obviously all the griots that came before me, so Vincent, Farrell, Gabby, all of these people that have given me the platform to be able to say, I'm going to do an international slam for my first ever poetry slam.
Wow. Wow. So I'm told that while there as well, you got a chance to meet quite a famous person, America's Got Talent, Brandon Leake. What was that like? How did that come about?
So Brandon is the first spoken word poet to win America's Got Talent, for anybody who's not aware. And that's a huge thing because spoken word is one of those things that you don't see in those major arenas that often. And so when I got there is actually when I found out that he sponsored some of the prizes for the slam. So then I was like, so I get to meet somebody who actually put spoken word on like a huge stage like AGT. Are you kidding? But yeah, it was, I fangirled just a little bit. And I don't usually fangirl. But yeah, it was a really interesting experience.
Oh, this is beautiful. What do you think is next for you, Cindy Celeste?
Ooh, I love that question, and I don't like that question because like I feel like after you do something big like this, people always expect more big stuff to come, and like I always immediately want to say I want to rest just for like a month.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, but after I came back, I had a conversation with the CEO of the NCF. I also the poetry scene more in Barbados because I met some people in Texas that were like, "What's the poetry scene like in the Caribbean? I've never seen Barbados' poetry scene. I want to come." And I'm just like, "Okay, we had to build it into something that makes it worth their while, that gives them bang for their buck." So a lot of work. I'm going to be doing a lot of work with developing what a poetry scene looks like here, event-wise. Also thinking about going into schools. There's community development efforts and stuff like that I have planned. I don't want to get specific because I haven't written all the proposals yet. But that's the line I'm going down for sure.
It sounds great, and we continue to celebrate who you are, Cindy Celeste. And just to remind you, we have a 100% Bajan station here in 94.7 FM, so that's an avenue there for you. And we are also Bajan TV here on TV8 as well. Hint, hint, another opportunity as well.
Oh, so yes.
Weave us into your plans as you go as well. So thank you so much for joining us. We are so proud of you, Cindy. We really truly are. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Cindy Celeste, our slam winner right there, who represented us at the Women of the World Poetry Slam. And she's back on the island looking to do even bigger things. A break, and when we come back, we're looking at one guy as we look at International Jazz Day.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning.
Our home, Barbados indeed. That's Wesley Morris, by the way. He's a violinist. And I must tell you, confession time, I sang on that track. Y'all, at the end of the video, when you watch it, look for the choir, the combination of the Barclays Singers and the St. Peter's Church Choir. You will find me right there on the left. Look for me in the left corner. Look for me. That's where you find me. Wesley Morris, it is so good to have you there. Good morning, Wesley. How are you doing?
Good morning, Pearson. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm good, thank you.
Oh, listen, you just played for us one of our iconic songs now. It is such a sweet song. It's so riveting. And you played it so well on the violin, one of my favorite instruments as well, a string instrument. Beautiful. It's so calming. Why did you choose that, or why did that choose you?
Well, it actually chose me. I went to Milton Lynch Primary, and I was introduced. I was the head boy at the time, and this lady by the name of Joynette Lynch, which is the director of the National Youth Symphony Orchestra, she came and she handpicked a bunch of us, and I was like, why are you going to choose me of all people to play the violin? And in my eyes, 7, 10 years old, I'm like, the violin is such a female type instrument, it's so delicate. Fast forward a bit, I actually had a liking for it. I did my first exam and I got a distinction, and that was kind of like the encouragement I needed to keep going with the instrument.
Nice, well done. And now you are at the Berklee School of Music. How's that for you?
Yes, sir. Berklee is an incredible experience, incredible atmosphere. When I had the opportunity to go there in 2017 for the Berklee Summer Program, which was sponsored by Derek Walker and the Barbados Jazz Christmas Jazz Competition, with Nicholas Banger's band, it was so surreal. I was just telling myself, like, how am I even like so blessed and so fortunate to attend the school and be in the presence of these exceptional musicians because they're such high caliber. It's so fascinating. It was mind blowing for me.
So paint for me what it is like to be there at the Berklee College of Music. You know, you're going to see all of these feet walking by and you're thinking, my goodness, that is, and that was, and they're all outstanding. And then there's you, Wesley Morris from Barbados. What's that like?
It is, it is eye-opening, and it is very much a confidence booster in some aspects, because a lot of the professors I have are friends that I'm colleagues with at school. They're people I see on YouTube or TV America. That's surreal that I could be next to them. I could call them my friend. I could collaborate with them. And the thing that I like about the atmosphere there is that they teach you to embrace who you are. So me coming from the Caribbean, they always tell me to embrace my voice, embrace my culture, and what I bring to the table, because there's no one at Berklee that's just like me, or vice versa. Amen. So it's always an open atmosphere, and I'm grateful that I've learned so much this far.
There are parents who look at the violin and think it's such a classical instrument, and I don't want my child involved in classical music. And they run away from it, and they shy away from that. What do you say to that kind of thinking?
I would say not to embrace that kind of thinking, because music is a collective thing. It starts one place. Like, I started classically, and from then my interest nurtured into something where I played at church. Eventually, I went on to Barbados Community College and studied under Mr. Roger Giddens and that entire program of amazing tutors. Afterwards, I had the opportunity to play with Arturo Tapin. So I would say, like, don't ever think as music as just one bubble where you're gonna be in this area. Like, as you expand your artistry and who you are in your music and your artistry, it can take you places you don't know where it's gonna take you. So never classify anything that you're doing as just one box. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, as they say.
The teaching and the instruction in classical music is a fantastic foundation for any other genre of music going forward. Don't you think?
Definitely. Even going back to people like Miles Davis and those jazz heads, they studied the classical before they even indulge into all the jazz and stuff that people hear today. That was the fundamental basis of their knowledge. So,
see, and you laughed at me when
very much important.
And you laughed at me when I told you I sang in that choir. See, I know what I'm talking about. Wesley Morris, I really want to thank you so much for joining us. Today is International Jazz Day. What does jazz mean to you, very quickly?
jazz to me is my individual voice, my interpretation of what music is to me. Jazz has so many hats that different musicians and different people can wear. And for me, as I said, coming up in Berkeley, they've taught me to embrace my voice and my culture and what Wesley Morris and who Wesley Morris is in my music. And it's funny because my professors, this is my third last semester at Berkeley, and they've all been telling me, we want to hear more Wesley. Even though you've been studying with us and we've taught you a lot of things, we want to hear more Wesley than the stuff that we've been teaching you on paper.
Wow. We can't wait to hear more Wesley as well here in Barbados, so we look forward to that opportunity real soon. Wesley Morris, thank you so much for joining us here on Morning Barbados.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Likewise.
Thanks,
all right. Before we go, a couple of things to remind you of. You know, we would have spoken to Rosalind Hurley earlier. She is making the appeal to assist those disabled in St. Vincent. And so we want to encourage you to continue doing so by making your donations to the National Disabilities Unit, that special appeal to assist those with disabilities in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You can drop it off. You can call them 535 3600, 535 3600, or call Roslyn at 535 3608. That's one thing we want to remind you of. Cindy Celeste, who we saw just a moment ago, she'll be appearing on the Here We're Going On show with DJ Simmons tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, Saturday morning, the show starts at 11 o'clock and it's on 94.7, the best 24/7. Then tomorrow night is the Stand Home Party right here on CBC TV, Bajan TV, with live performances by Brutal Crank Star and Chief Din, it looks like. So we really want to encourage you to join us on CBC TV 8, on our Facebook page, CBC Barbados, and our YouTube channel as well. We start at 9. That's it for today. That's it for the week. For the crew, to all of you, thank you for joining us. We'll see you on Monday.